In Cleveland, faith has become a survival instinct. Decades of heartbreak have trained fans to find hope wherever it flickers. And right now, that hope wears the name Shedeur Sanders. They've watched coaches come and go, executives quit mid-season, and Jimmy Haslam oscillate between fury and silence. Yet, the belief that one young quarterback could rescue them remains unshakable. It's not just about football anymore, it's about identity, pride, and the refusal to give up on a team that keeps giving up on itself.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
That's why Haslam's eruption over Sanders struck such a nerve. It wasn't just an owner losing his temper, it was a city watching its last thread of belief fray. Cleveland's endless rebuilds have turned into rituals of disappointment, and even now, the franchise seems more reactive than reflective. Sanders may one day live up to the myth the city has built around him, but until the Browns fix what's broken above the field, the cycle will always return. Chaos, collapse, and another cry for salvation. The Browns are unraveling again, and this time it's louder than ever. Jimmy Haslam isn't just frustrated behind the scenes, he's taken his anger to the public stage, and it's all centered around one name, Shedeur Sanders. The Browns owner has officially detonated, calling Sanders' departure a massive mistake, and demanding that he return to the team immediately. This isn't some calculated PR statement. It's not a quiet internal review. This is the top of the franchise melting down in broad daylight. And for Cleveland, it's yet another chapter in a saga that refuses to end, because it never really begins. Every year it's the same cycle. New promise, new plan, then the spiral. But this is different. Haslam's eruption shows just how deep the cracks have gotten. Let's start with what's at stake. Shedeur Sanders, a college standout, never had the chance to be the guy in Cleveland. His time was short, his usage was inconsistent, and his exit, while not flashy, has now become the center of a full-blown identity crisis for the team. Why? Because fans and media alike have turned Sanders into a symbol of hope, of what could have been, of what the franchise continues to fumble. And Haslam sees it. He sees the headlines. He hears the chatter. And instead of holding back, he's leaning into the chaos. Calling the Sanders situation a massive mistake isn't just a personal regret, it's a shot fired at the organization he built. It's Haslam throwing the front office under the bus, right alongside the coaching staff, in front of a fan base that's already tired of being told to be patient. This is what desperation looks like in the NFL. And it's not happening in a vacuum. Haslam's outburst comes during a season that's already teetering on collapse. Staff are quitting mid-season. Executives like Paul DePodesta are walking away, not to another team but to a different sport. That's not a lateral move. That's an escape route. That's what people do when they believe the structure is beyond saving. And it's not just the execs. Kevin Stefanski is coaching like a man who knows the call is coming. Every press conference sounds like a farewell letter. Every game is another quiet reminder that the team has no pulse, no momentum, no clear direction. Meanwhile, the locker room is running on fumes. When leadership loses the plot, it always finds its way onto the field. The body language? Flat. The energy? Non-existent. The confidence? Gone. And in the middle of all this, Shedeur Sanders has become the focal point. Not because of what he did, but because of what he represents. Sanders is now the embodiment of the Browns' endless habit of wasting potential. Of having something promising in their hands, only to let it go and then try to claw it back when everything else falls apart. Now Haslam wants him back. But why would he come back? Let's talk about that. Sanders, even with limited playing time, became a presence. Coaches noticed his resilience, his poise, his ability to lead in a storm. And yet, with all the noise and dysfunction swirling around him, the organization never built a system to support him. He wasn't nurtured, he was neglected. Now, when everything is on fire, they want him to walk back in and save it. That's not how football works. You can't run your franchise like a panic button. You can't cycle through ideas like it's a brainstorm session. You can't treat players like solutions to structural collapse. And that's exactly what the Browns are doing. This isn't about building a future. It's about appearing to build a future. And fans are starting to see through it. They've been through this rodeo before. The draft day speeches. The coaching hires. The locker room photo ops. The new era slogans. They've heard every version of "We're turning the page," and they've watched every chapter end the same way. The difference this time? Haslam has torn down the curtain himself. There's no illusion of order. No hidden plan. Just rage, regret, and a demand to bring back the guy the system pushed away in the first place. But even if Sanders does come back, what exactly is he returning to? A fractured staff. A crumbling locker room. A front office that's in open retreat. And the same cycle of dysfunction that's claimed every other so-called savior before him. That's the heart of the issue. The Browns don't know how to build around talent. They know how to spotlight it, hype it, sell it, but they don't know how to support it. Because every year they throw a new quarterback into a broken machine and expect it to magically run. And when it doesn't, they blame the player, fire someone, reshuffle the deck, and start the same doomed process all over again. Shedeur Sanders is just the latest to get caught in that spin cycle. And now Haslam wants him to jump back in, because the fan base needs something, anything to hold on to. But fans aren't blind anymore. They see the dysfunction. They see the coaching staff that's lost its voice. The executives disappearing into the night. The owner trying to rewrite history in real time. And they're exhausted. Exhausted from the false starts. From the annual implosions. From being the only consistent thing this franchise has ever had, while the team continues to treat their loyalty like a guarantee. And still they hold out hope. Because that's what Cleveland does. They believe. Even when the scoreboard doesn't. Even when the ownership doesn't deserve it. But belief can't fix a broken system. And neither can Shedeur Sanders. Until Haslam looks inward. Until the franchise stops chasing symbolic solutions and starts addressing the foundational problems. This cycle will continue. More fire. More fallout. More failed attempts to slap a new face on an old problem. So no, Shedeur Sanders isn't the solution. He's just the latest reminder that the Browns keep skipping the hard work and expecting miracles. And until that changes, it won't matter who's under center. Let us know where you stand. Would bringing back Sanders be redemption or just more delusion? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like if this franchise has tested your emotional limits, and subscribe for more deep dives into the most chaotic stories in sports. Because in Cleveland, it's never just about football. It's about surviving the collapse, over and over again. JH, at this point, the Cleveland Browns aren't just enduring another rough patch. They're putting on a full-scale organizational implosion, live and in HD. Every piece of this franchise, from the front office to the locker room, is coming apart at the seams. And Jimmy Haslam is out here pouring gasoline on it all with a megaphone. His demand that Shedeur Sanders return to the team is just the latest escalation in a pattern that's defined Cleveland football for the better part of 2 decades. High expectations, internal chaos, and a public meltdown that drags everyone down with it. But this one hits different. Because this time, the face of the franchise's failure isn't a coach or a coordinator, or even a quarterback who flamed out. It's a player they never gave a real chance to begin with. A player who's now become a kind of cult figure in Cleveland lore, the one who got away before he even really arrived. Haslam's calling it a massive mistake. But what he's really doing is making Shedeur the poster child for everything that's wrong with the Browns. The short-term thinking, the mishandling of talent, the desperate grasp for control. And in doing that, he's not fixing the situation, he's exposing it. Let's not sugarcoat it. The Browns are in disarray. Staff members are walking out mid-season. Executives are leaving with zero public explanation. Paul DePodesta, a guy who was supposed to be the analytics mind steering this ship into the modern NFL, has pieced out and returned to baseball. That doesn't scream we're close. That screams, this is beyond salvaging. And then there's Kevin Stefanski. His coaching tenure is hanging by a thread and he's coaching like he knows it. The energy is off. The team looks disconnected. The play calling feels safe, scared. Like someone trying not to lose a job instead of trying to win games. And who could blame him? When your owner is publicly demanding the return of a player you didn't prioritize, how do you lead with confidence? You don't. You survive. You tread water. You wait for the inevitable pink slip. Meanwhile, the locker room has no direction. Players are watching all of this unfold, on social media, in the press, in hallway whispers, and trying to stay focused while the entire structure around them collapses. That's not a winning culture. That's survival mode. And all of it now circles around Shedeur Sanders. A guy who was barely in the building long enough to unpack his bags is now being held up as the Browns' missed opportunity, their lost messiah. It's not even about his actual ability anymore. It's about what he represents. Hope, mismanaged and thrown away. A symbol of everything this team could have been, if only they knew how to build around someone instead of betting everything on a miracle. But the worst part? This obsession with bringing him back isn't a real solution. it's just another distraction. Cleveland has been doing this for years. Find a scapegoat. Shift the conversation. Pretend like one move will change everything. But it never does. Because the problem isn't who is on the roster, it's how the roster is handled. How leadership operates. How dysfunction at the top infects every other part of the organization. You can bring Shedeur back tomorrow, hand him the keys to the offense, and make a dozen hype videos to celebrate it. But it won't matter if the culture that failed him the first time hasn't changed. And let's be honest, it hasn't. This isn't a team that builds. It's a team that reacts. That makes emotional decisions when things get hard. That cycles through coaching staffs and quarterbacks like it's playing franchise roulette. That throws young players into unstable systems and then wonders why they don't thrive. That's why this cycle never ends. Because no matter how many restarts they initiate, they never actually reset anything. It's always a new coat of paint on the same cracked foundation. And fans have seen it all before. They've seen the first-round QBs thrown to the wolves. The offensive masterminds brought in to fix the system, only to be fired the following season. The GMs who promise a long-term plan, only to vanish when the owner loses patience. This isn't a football team. It's a carousel of chaos. And now Shedeur Sanders is being dragged into the center of it. Whether he wants that role or not, whether he ever returns or not, his name is already etched into the narrative. Not as the savior. As the symbol. The ultimate what if. And that's where the real damage lies. Because the more the Browns lean into this fantasy, that bringing back Sanders will fix their problems, the further they drift from reality. No player can carry a franchise that can't even carry its own weight. No quarterback can thrive when leadership is fractured. No coach can lead when every decision is second-guessed by ownership in the press. And Jimmy Haslam? He's not just second-guessing. He's torching bridges in real time. He's calling out the front office, undermining the staff, stirring up media frenzy. All while the team is still trying to finish a season. That's not leadership. That's chaos dressed up as passion. And it's exactly what's kept this team in neutral for the better part of 20 years. Because this isn't just about one player. This is about a pattern that never breaks. A team that confuses noise with progress. That sells hype instead of stability. That treats rebuilding like a seasonal event instead of a commitment. So what now? We all know how this goes. The coaching staff is likely gone at the end of the season, if not sooner. Another GM might be shuffled in. Another round of players will be branded as the new face of the future. The same press conferences will be held, promising accountability, culture shifts, and finally getting it right. And maybe, somewhere in that process, there'll be another push for Shedeur Sanders to return. But if that happens and nothing else has changed, it's just more of the same. Because the Browns can't just bring Sanders back. They have to build something worth coming back to. And right now that doesn't exist. It's not just about fixing the depth chart. It's about fixing the mindset, the leadership, the approach. The way this franchise functions at its core. Because until that's addressed, no player, no matter how talented, stands a chance. If you've stuck with the Browns through all of this, you already know. You've watched the same cycle on repeat, hoping this time it'll finally break. And maybe it will. But not like this. Not through a public tantrum. Not through a desperate demand. Not through turning a 21-year-old quarterback into a franchise-wide fix-it button. At this point, you almost have to ask, what exactly is the Cleveland Browns' endgame here? Because if Jimmy Haslam's latest outburst is any indication, this franchise isn't trying to fix itself, it's trying to force a comeback arc that hasn't been earned. You don't demand the return of a player you mismanaged and then act like that alone will patch the gaping holes in your organization. But that's exactly what's happening. Haslam wants Shedeur Sanders back and he's not being quiet about it. He's calling it a massive mistake to let him go. He's putting pressure on the staff, on the remaining front office, on everyone except himself. And once again, Cleveland finds itself in a place it knows all too well, staring down a cliff, calling it a foundation. There's no stability left. No chain of command. No sense that anyone in the building is working from the same script. Staff are quitting mid-season. Executives are leaving for baseball. That's not just an organizational failure, it's a credibility collapse. If your most senior people are jumping ship to entirely different sports, they're not leaving for opportunity, they're fleeing dysfunction. And it's not hard to see why. The Browns have been spinning their wheels in the same toxic loop for years. Hire, fire, rebuild, implode, repeat. At some point, the pattern stops being a coincidence and starts being a culture. And right now, that culture is broken. Paul DePodesta was supposed to be the analytics visionary who brought long-term thinking to a short-term franchise. Instead, he quietly exited stage left, leaving behind more questions than answers. And in his absence, what do we get? Jimmy Haslam trying to steer the ship with emotional outbursts and impulsive demands. The Sanders situation didn't break the Browns. It just made the cracks impossible to ignore. This was a team already reeling from internal instability, coaching fatigue, and leadership vacuum. And instead of addressing any of that with structure or accountability, Haslam chose chaos. But that's become the norm in Cleveland, hasn't it? The Browns never go quietly. They don't rebuild in silence or lose with dignity. Everything is loud, reactive, and ultimately self-inflicted. One step forward, two firings back. That's been the rhythm for years. And now, with Shedeur Sanders turned into the face of the franchise's failure to develop talent, Haslam wants a do-over. He wants to hit undo as if this is just another off-season roster adjustment. But what exactly is he offering Sanders in return? The same instability that pushed him away in the first place? The same front office chaos? The same coaching carousel that makes development impossible? Because unless something changes structurally, bringing Shedeur back would just be setting him up to fail, again. And that's what no one seems to be saying out loud. You can't save a team by adding talent if the environment destroys that talent. Cleveland doesn't have a player problem. It has a system problem. Kevin Stefanski is still technically coaching, but anyone watching the games can see the writing on the wall. He looks like a man already mentally halfway out the door. And honestly, can you blame him? How do you lead a team when ownership is publicly contradicting your decisions? Haslam demanding Sanders' return is more than frustration. It's an indictment. It says, we don't trust the process. We don't trust the coaches. We don't trust what we built. And if the owner doesn't trust the system, why would the players? Why would Shedeur Sanders? Because this team isn't just losing games. It's hemorrhaging direction. Every move feels like a reaction, not a plan. Every press conference feels like damage control. And the fan base? They've seen it all before. They were promised Baker Mayfield would be the one. That he'd break the curse. And then they ran him out. They were told Odell Beckham Jr. would bring a winning culture. That ended in passive-aggressive Instagram stories and sideline tantrums. Every season comes with a new savior. A new marketing push. A new reason to believe. And every season ends with another reboot. So when Haslam calls Sanders the one that got away, it's not surprising. The Browns always need someone to pin hope on. They need a symbol. A spark. Because they don't know how to build sustainable fire. JH, and what's worse, this isn't about Sanders' development. It's not about football fit. It's about optics. Haslam is making moves for appearance's sake. Because the media narrative has turned. The fan support is cracking. And the easiest way to manufacture hope is to try and reverse your latest blunder. But what does that say to the rest of the team? What does it say to whoever's left in leadership positions? That no one's safe. That decisions don't mean anything. That at any moment the owner can overrule, reverse, or detonate whatever plan you're working on. It creates a culture of fear. Of instability. Of constant uncertainty. And in football, that's lethal. Players don't develop in that kind of environment. Coaches can't execute in that kind of environment. And no amount of raw talent, not even Shedeur Sanders, can overcome that kind of dysfunction. Because talent is just the seed. It needs soil, water, consistency. Cleveland doesn't provide that. It provides chaos. And yet here we are again. Watching another young player get turned into a lightning rod. Watching ownership scramble for control. Watching fans beg for something, anything, to feel like progress. But it's not. This is stalling. This is a franchise in crisis mode, trying to retroactively fix one mistake without addressing the deeper rot underneath. And unless something changes fundamentally, nothing will change at all. Bringing Shedeur back would be a band-aid on a broken leg. It would satisfy headlines, give the fans a sugar rush of hope, maybe even buy Haslam a little time. But it won't fix the Browns. Because until leadership stabilizes, until there's a real commitment to long-term infrastructure, until players are developed instead of discarded, this team will keep spinning. New names. Same chaos. And eventually, fans will stop caring altogether. That's the real risk. Not losing games, but losing faith. Because Cleveland fans? They've been patient. Too patient. They've endured the most unstable franchise in modern sports and still show up, still hope, still believe that this time might be different. They deserve better than this. They deserve a team that doesn't torch potential. That doesn't build around public outbursts. that doesn't pretend that dysfunction is passion. They deserve structure, stability, and yes, accountability. So unless the Browns are willing to rebuild from the top down, starting with the very culture that's kept them in this loop, then no player, not even Sanders, can save them. And let's be honest, if Shedeur has smart people around him, he won't come back. Not unless there's proof that things are different. Not unless there's a clear vision. Not unless the people who burned the bridge the first time are no longer standing on it. So the question isn't whether Haslam wants him back. The question is, why would he return to this? And if that answer isn't clear, then the Browns are still exactly where they've always been. Let me know what you think. Does bringing Sanders back solve anything? Or is this just the latest distraction from deeper dysfunction? Drop a comment, hit like if you're exhausted by the Browns' endless loop, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this never-ending NFL soap opera. Because in Cleveland, rock bottom has a basement. And the saddest part? This entire saga is so on brand for the Browns, it's almost poetic. A once promising young player like Shedeur Sanders gets tossed into the vortex of Cleveland chaos, barely given room to grow, only to become the centerpiece of a full-blown crisis after he's already out the door. That's not strategy. That's desperation with a microphone. Jimmy Haslam isn't wrong about it being a mistake. It was. But the problem isn't just that Sanders left. It's that he was never given a real shot. And now Haslam wants to hit rewind like that erases the dysfunction that led to this moment? It doesn't. Because Shedeur was never the issue. The issue is the revolving door of staff. The issue is leadership that only acts when things are falling apart in public. The issue is pretending that bringing someone back into the same mess they left is some kind of solution. It's not. It's history trying to repeat itself in real time. And the team feels it. The energy is off. You can sense the disillusionment bleeding through the press conferences, the games, the locker room tension. When your own execs are ghosting mid-season and bouncing to other sports, that tells you everything you need to know. They're not rebuilding. They're retreating. This franchise isn't suffering from a lack of talent. It's suffering from a complete absence of direction. And Haslam, whether he realizes it or not, just confirmed that for everyone. The call isn't coming from outside the house. It's coming from the owner's box. And that's the story of the Browns right now, a team addicted to false hope and short-term fixes, throwing tantrums instead of taking accountability. Fans aren't asking for miracles, they're asking for a plan, a system. A reason to believe that this year won't end the same way as every other year. That this cycle of dysfunction will finally break. Because at some point, even the most loyal fans start asking why they care more about the team than the people running it do. So what's it going to be, Cleveland? Another PR stunt? Another coach on the chopping block? Another player held up as the next great hope? Or is it finally time to build something real? Let's hear it. Do you think Shedeur should return? Would it change anything? Or are we just watching the same script with a new cast? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you're tired of this endless loop, and subscribe for more deep dives into the NFL's most chaotic franchises. Because this isn't just a meltdown. It's a cycle. And Cleveland's still spinning.